So I'd love to ask people that are in bands who they think is the most important person when it comes to putting on a live show. A lot of people tend to say that it's the drummer because the drummer has to set the groove, set the tempo. If they're not playing in a solid way, it's hard for the audience to really get into it. There's that saying that if your drummer sucks, the whole band sucks. Other people will say it's the lead singer or the front person because they have to have the charisma, they have to have the ability to communicate to the audience, to draw them in. And without that, it's really hard to put on a great show. But the one person a lot of people neglect to say, at least if they're a newer band, if they have some experience, they'll say this sometimes, but they'll fail to mention the sound tech. Because everything else being perfect, let's say you have the best band and they're playing the show of their life and all that's going on great, but the sound tech is failing them, nothing else matters. It's like all that hard work suddenly gets nullified because the sound is terrible. Because I've been playing live for over 30 years, I have tons of stories, but one that really stands out to me is the time that we were headlining. And the band that was opening for us was a really great band, and I was excited to actually just sit and watch them. And as they played, something seemed to be missing. And I looked around, I just really couldn't pinpoint it at first, and then it hit me. I'm like, oh, there's no kick drum. I looked up at the drummer. I thought maybe his kick drum pedal broke or something like that. I was going to run backstage and grab a different one for him. But that wasn't the case. He was hitting his kick drum because you could see like the front head sort of bulging out every time he kicked it. I was like, what is going on? Maybe the kick drum microphone is broken or something. I'm not sure. So I went towards the sound tech. He was behind a soundboard, and I was really careful because, they're used to drunk people coming up and being like, turn up the guitar and all that kind of stuff. So they're pretty sensitive sometimes when it comes to people coming up and talking to them. Trust me, I've been on both sides of the board, I know this. So I went up and I just looked over his shoulder and I noticed that the kick drum was actually being gated. What that means is if the drummer isn't hitting the kick drum hard enough, it doesn't send a strong enough signal because it's being gated, so it won't even let it go through at all. So it's basically gone. Once in a while, the drummer would hit the kick drum hard, and all of a sudden you would hear that and feel that, but all the other times it was completely gone. I thought that was really weird that the sound tech couldn't pick up on that. It's such a huge part of the sound, and the fact that it was coming in and out was really noticeable to me. So like I said, a lot of sound techs can get sensitive about people coming up, so I was just gonna ignore it, even though it was going to bother me. I was just going to walk away. But then I looked up at the drummer and I noticed he was playing his butt off. He was sweating, he was doing his best, and I thought, you know what, it's really sad that he's playing so well up there on stage, but the whole audience isn't able to get the full effect. It's like we can't feel his beat because the kick drum is gone. So I tried to be really kind about it. I went up and I was like, sir, I don't know if you noticed, but the kick drum is being gated. And I was just going to walk away. I thought because I said gated, he would think I knew what I was talking about, and he'd be like, oh, cool, I'll just fix it real quick. Because all it would have taken was a little turn of a knob, and it would have been all better. But immediately, he throws his arms up, and he goes, well, if you think you can mix better than me, go ahead, be my guest. He starts to walk away from the board. And I was kind of tempted to take over, but I didn't. I was just going to walk away myself. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm not going to piss this guy off. A little bit selfishly because my band was going to play next and I didn't want him to sabotage us. I thought if he was, going to react that way to what I said, he's capable of anything at this point. So I just walked away, went back to my seat and just sat there and watched the band, even though it kind of annoyed me that I couldn't feel the kick drum. And it was kind of funny because after about 3 songs, I started to hear the kick drum back in the mix. So he figured it out and then he slowly brought it back to where it should be. So it ended up working in the end. Unfortunately, the band was already halfway through their set. So we play our set and then everything went fine. Afterwards, he came up to me and he actually said, you know what? I'm sorry because you were right, the kick was gated, and I acted like a total ass about it. That really gave me hope that he said that afterwards. He recognized his mistake, he, came to his senses, and he was cool about it. So the story ends on a good note. There's just been so many times, though, where I'm in a band that practices a lot, and we try to get everything as good as it can be. We get to a show, sometimes driving hours, especially back in the country band days, to play some of these shows out in the middle of nowhere. And we would have to play for 3 sets. So that's 3 one-hour sets. We had half-hour breaks in between. So back then we'd have to play from like 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the morning. So 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So that's a ton of work to do for anybody. You have to load and unload the PA system. So it's a whole night's work. And one time we did that. And at the end of the show, we hit the final chord. We're like, good night. Well, this guy comes up to me and he's like, hey man, that was an awesome show. There's only one problem. I couldn't hear your guitar the entire night. And I just I don't know, I wanted to fall over dead because I'm just like thinking of all the work that it took to put on that show. And then for the guy to come up and tell me at the end of the show that my guitar was not audible. You could probably see why I ended up retiring from playing live. I just sub every once in a while now, but man, those frustrations really get to you over time. And I thanked him for letting me know, but inside I wanted to just scream, why didn't you tell me earlier? After the first set even. I would have been okay with that, but he waited till the very end of the show, probably to be polite. And it just took the life out of me. And it's not just not hearing me. Sometimes they couldn't hear the vocals for most of the show. Or my favorite is one time somebody came up and said, I don't know why, but the only thing I could really hear was the hi-hat of the drums. And that's, the cymbal that the drummer hits all the time. Out of anything in the band, why is that turned up the loudest? That was just so frustrating to me. It's like trying to watch a movie and throughout the entire movie you can't hear what the main actor is saying. Or maybe the scenes are so dark you can't tell what's really going on. Or it's kind of like if you're watching the Super Bowl and there's a huge sign in front of wherever the action is at all times. Music's a little different though, because it's maybe not that obvious to a lot of people in the audience. They might think everything sounds fine. But to the people who care about all the details of the music, whether it's the musicians or the people watching the show, it could be that obvious sometimes. Now this video might seem like I'm just ripping on all sound techs. I'm not. What I want to make this video for is actually to praise those, even though they seem to be fewer in number these days. I want to praise those people that are actually working really hard with whatever they have to work with. And we've played dive bars where the sound tech has barely anything to work with. Still, they work their butt off though to try to make things as good as it could possibly be. And I always shake their hand. I always thank them for trying so hard because in those circumstances, you would think they'd have every right to slack off. But it's really surprising. A lot of people try to do their best when it comes to, even the smallest gigs. Yes, it does help to maybe buy them a drink or, throw them some cash or something. But overall, you could tell they want to do their best. So there have been a lot of sound techs that have been great in my life. But there are also those people, sometimes in bigger venues as well, that, you're playing your set and you look up to ask for something in the monitor, let's say, and they're nowhere to be found. And you find out later that they were taking smoke breaks like every 10 minutes during your set. It's happened many times. But this video really is to praise the good sound techs out there. One of my best friends is a sound tech here in town in Minnesota. His name is Christopher Blood. And I feel pretty spoiled because I can always ask him to come run sound. And so I'm used to this high level when it comes to sound production. So whenever he's not available, he's pretty busy these days, it's always hit or miss whether or not we're going to have a good sounding show or not. And it made me really wonder why it seems that really great sound techs are at a premium these days. It might be because the last 3 years, the pandemic, a lot of people just decided not to do it anymore. It makes sense. If live music was dead for a couple years, that a lot of people would jump ship. And locally, we've had 2 huge music production colleges close. Just under weird circumstances, but you could just tell it seemed like interest was dwindling even before the pandemic. But now that live music is back and it seems to be thriving again, I really hope that that changes. I hope a lot more people get interested in doing it so that the pool of available, hardworking sound techs grows again and that we can see all of that come back to life. That would be great. This video is also a call out to anybody who runs a club that offers live music. Not to see the sound tech as just someone you have to pay to run the machines. There's an actual art form to it. And if they're not doing their job, there's a lot of things that look bad. Not only the band, which is sad because they're doing their job. It's not their fault. It makes the sound tech look bad, but it also makes the entire club look bad. Because why would you want to go back to a club if every band you see sounds terrible? So it's really important to invest in a really good sound tech and to value them and to see them as just as important as the band that's up on the stage. So if you're in a band or were in a band and you have any sound tech stories, that would be really great to hear them, whether they're positive or negative. Either way, I want to hear about them in the comment section. And thanks for watching. I guess this was kind of a rant on my part. And once again, I just want to, if I was wearing a hat, tip my hat to all the sound techs out there that are actually trying and that actually care about what they're doing. It's kind of strange that that's so rare these days to see people really care about their job. But to those that do, I really appreciate it. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, and we'll catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.